Hey everyone, Panyo here. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of After Dinner Mints. I highly encourage everyone watching to join us in the Art Blocks Discord. A link to our Discord can be found in the description of this video. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of our weekly show. And now let's introduce our guest for this afternoon. We have generative artist ippsketch.
Hey, good to be
How's it?
here.
Yeah, how's it going?
Great, very good.
Cool. Well, I'm so glad to have you on. I know we've been trying to get you on for a little bit. Schedules, I know for everyone are just a little bit crazy, but super excited to have you on. We have a lot to cover. Yeah, to kick things off, why don't we just go ahead and I would love to hear just a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I am a mechanical engineer by training. So I have a PhD in mechanical engineering. I've worked for many years in mechanical as a mechanical engineer, doing medical device R&D design, and in that work, I've done a lot of computer simulations, and those computer simulations have all required code, and so I have this really good code toolbox, coding background and toolbox for problem solving that's really allowed me to transition well into generative art, because I kind of view it like my background's engineering, but with when I do simulations, I'm writing code and then I'm visualizing outputs, and it's very much almost like generative art in and of itself. So yeah, so I have an engineering background, and I've been doing kind of generative art on the side for a while too.
Very cool. And I'm curious to know, do you have any family ties to art? Was there like where was your inspiration from when you started getting into generative art?
Yeah, no family ties into art. I can't think of any family members who have been artists. Um, I mean, my interest in art came about from Twitter, just being on Twitter and seeing some other cool art there, and really wanting to make my own and get involved. So yeah, I don't have like a art, a formal art background. I haven't taken art history courses or anything. I didn't grow up with a lot of art, but I was exposed to it kind of through social media.
Very cool. That's awesome. I'm glad to know that there's like some positive parts of social media. It's just could be especially crypto Twitter. It can be just a really crazy space. So I'm glad to hear that. So your artist handle is ippsketch. I'm curious to know, like, how did that come about? I know the sketch part of it, but the IPP,
Sure.
like, what does that mean? Does it have any ties to anything?
Yeah, so IPP stands for I plus plus. Um, I plus plus is an increment operator used in a lot of coding languages. So I is a variable that's used a lot, and then to increment the variable I, you do I plus plus, and a lot of programming languages use that. And so it was kind of a nod to the code behind the art. That's why I chose IPP for I plus plus, and really it was because Twitter wouldn't allow plus symbols
Hmm.
um, on their handles. And then yeah, sketch, because I really, the way I viewed it at first was just kind of throwing sketches out there. I wasn't looking to make like serious art at first or anything. I was just kind of sketching and having fun. Um, and yeah, IPP, now that it that's out there and I'm saying it, like I can hear it. It probably wasn't the best handle to pick. My 9-year-old son kind of laughs and makes fun of me for it all the time. Like, IPP sketch. It's funny. It wasn't intentional. I didn't hear it at first, and I did a poll on Twitter not long ago, and it turns out most people say ippsketch in their head when they
Ipsketch,
read it.
yeah.
So that's fine with me. That's probably better anyway.
Ipsketch. Okay. So do you prefer I call you Ipsketch
I
or
I
does it
plus
matter?
plus is the formal way, but it doesn't
Okay.
matter. I'm happy with
All
whatever.
right.
Plus is my
All right.
name, so
Sounds
that's
great.
fine too. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'm curious to know, how did you get into the NFT crypto space? Were you into crypto before NFTs were available, or is this something that just all kind of came about in the past year or so?
Yeah, it came about in the last year or so. I mean, I was aware of crypto. I knew about Bitcoin, but I hadn't been invested in it or anything. I followed it in the news, but no more than that. My interest primarily was art, and the cryptos kind of come along with that in the last few months. But um, yeah, I mostly art was my main pull to the space.
Got it. And I'm always curious to ask people, because everyone has a different way of how they got into crypto and NFTs. Did it instantly click for you when you learned about, crypto and NFTs, or was it just kind of something where you kind of blew off and then over time you kind of understood it?
No, I still don't know if it's fully clicked. I mean, it's you know, it's a interesting and unique and strange thing, this whole crypto NFT space. I mean, I think it's really exciting. There's a lot of potential there for where the space can grow and what it can turn into. There's a lot of weird stuff out there, but there's a lot of great stuff too. And so it's fun to be a part of it and be in kind of on the ground floor of some things. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where it goes because it's got some great potential, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I know this is all, and this comes during like a crazy time,
Yeah.
obviously in the crypto space. But I think we all kind of believe in generative art and how it's kind of being built on the blockchain.
Mhm.
And I'm curious to know, how did you learn about art blocks? Was it through another artist that you were following, or did you kind of just stumble upon it, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was involved, like I said, on Twitter, kind of just in the generative art circles on there, and it's hard to stay away from art blocks and when you're in that space. So I learned about it through Twitter. I think Matt's Subscapes was the very first project I really kind of saw and followed. I really enjoyed like reading his descriptions of on I think Medium, on the background of it all. So I think that was the first thing that turned me on to the first project that turned me on to art blocks. Um, yeah.
Cool. And can we? I always love seeing earlier pieces of work from people and artists. And I'm curious to know, can we see some of your early generative art pieces that you
Sure.
created?
Yeah, we can. Where did they go? Um, sorry, let me pull it up.
No problem. Yeah, and if you don't mind, just
Yeah,
talking to us a little bit about the piece and how it kind of came
sure.
about, inspiration.
So this is actually an engineering simulation. So this is kind of like I was talking about before. I have an engineering background. I've run a lot of simulations, and those simulations, when we run them, we introduce randomness through stochastic variables. So there's randomness in the engineering simulations. So this is what I was talking about, where engineering simulations are kind of a form of generative art in a way. This is a spring mass stamper. It's not important what that is. It's thing that oscillates back and forth. But you can see there's lots of random lines in there, and those random lines are simulating all of these different possible parameters that are happening. So this is kind of a generative piece. I mean, it's kind of tongue in cheek that I'm saying this is generative, but yeah, this is kind of my engineering background art that really I consider it still to be my first kind of generative art works.
And was this back in what year? Is this like 2018, 2019,
I
or?
mean, I made plots like this from I don't know 2005. I mean, I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know
Wow.
when
Okay.
especially a lot of these kind of this kind of stuff I would do because with engineering and with these simulations you do all this stuff and then but you have to convey it to people in some way and you want to make it visually appealing and aesthetics are important there too. So it's a different form of art, but it's still kind of art, I think.
Very cool. Do you have any actually to kind of show the progression
Sure.
of your art in the blockchain? Because I know we're going to talk a little bit about some of your foundation, OpenSea, your project Bent on Art Blocks. Can
Hmm.
we see your first ever NFT that you minted,
Yes, we can.
and maybe why you selected this specific piece? Because I'm always curious to know, like, what was also kind of the experience of minting something. Did it feel real, or was it just kind of like, cool, we'll just see what happens and this kind of just like testing things out, or what?
Yeah. So this is my very first mint NFT. It was on Hicketnunk back in maybe April of last year, kind of just when those things were getting a little bit started over there. Um, and at the time, I was really into infinite loop GIFs. So GIFs that were short, but they would loop over and over again. Um, and so this is a couple of those. And so these are infinite loop flow fields. They're flow fields that cycle over and over again. They're actually pretty short little clips, but they loop. So these were my very first NFTs, and yeah, it was very fun at the time. I think these might have even been like object for object, like giveaway kind of things. It was
Mhm.
very much just a fun kind of exploratory way to get into the space and meet some new people. Really,
Definitely. Cool. And so I do want to talk a little bit about some of your art that you released on Foundation and OpenSea, because these are some pieces that you released before your bent project, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. But yeah, so you had three pieces on foundation from your I++ sketchbook. I'm gonna call it I++.
That's good. Thank you.
And I'm curious to know if yeah, if you can talk a little bit about these pieces. I don't know if you have them, if you're able to
Yeah.
pull them up.
So I guess I'll briefly. I guess these aren't going to play by themselves. These were the first Ethereum pieces that I did. Um, I think this one was minted to the Funny Guys. It's also
Mhm.
kind of an infinite looping. It's an MP4, but it's the same kind of style. Um, and so those were my very first Ethereum pieces. Um, these were also on OpenSea on the Ethereum blockchain. These are just frames from that previous animation. Yeah, and then I'm getting to foundation. So these were my first kind of, I think, more serious attempts at kind of art, still images of art. And these were on foundation. These were all three of these were minted to Blockbird. So these also have sine waves, which are very much kind of similar to the last pieces you saw, and very much kind of a nod to the engineering stuff. But I'm starting to apply a lot more texture and really be intentional about that
Mhm.
here. And so yeah, these were my first foundation pieces.
Great. And I think there was a project on there. Maybe it was those three pieces
Hmm.
where Werner's nomenclature of colors
Yeah, that
was kind of an influence behind that.
yes. So those are back. I think I have those down here. So I actually just did these very recently. Um,
Hmm.
I think I released these a couple weeks ago. So this was very recent work. And yeah, this is based on Werner's nomenclature of colors, which is it's like a field guide from the 1800s, back before there were cameras. Um, there was a desire for biologists to document what kind of colors they were seeing in the field. And so there was this book that showed these 110 colors that they could reference in their works. And so that's what this is based on. There's a great book on it called Nature's Palette, which is it's a newer, it's kind of a, a reformatting of the of Warner's nomenclature. It's a really great book. I'd highly recommend it. So that's the book I found. I think Chris Reed told me about it first. I dove into that. I love the colors. They're very natural looking. They're really cool. And this is the order they're presented in the book. Um, and so it's just the colors here in the order they're presented, but then I'm doing different, kind of techniques to them to make them a little more interesting.
Very cool. So you said this is a part of three pieces you just minted. Is this are we going to see more from that algorithm in the future? Or is that more of just like a three-piece set? That's kind of it with that one.
But that's probably it with this particular style. Um, but I'm loving these colors a lot more. Like I'm working them into a drop that's happening tomorrow on Tezos. I can see myself using them more and more often as I go forward. Um, they're just really, I mean, they're natural colors, so they have just like a really visual appeal to me that some of the more brighter kind of techie colors don't. So yeah, I love the colors. I'm sure I'm going to keep exploring them more and more.
Cool.
Um, and yeah, so Raven bought the middle one, who's an art blocks artist, and I just
Yeah.
printed this for him, and it's an amazing print. Like he
Oh,
just
that's
received
awesome.
it today, I think. So I'm really excited to see that up on as well. They're really cool colors.
Cool. And
Everybody should check it out.
are those other two still available then for anyone to pick
Sure.
up?
Yeah, they are.
Great.
Everybody go,
Okay.
yeah, go check it out. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. And so I know you have some OpenSea pieces as well. Honestly, my favorite project is it's called Monuments,
Yeah,
which I think is absolutely
yeah.
stunning. Can
I
you
think
talk
that
a little bit about that?
yes, I think that might be my favorite project too. So Monuments is it's 10 pieces on foundation. Um it's a generative series, it's a generative work. So all of these were, I made thousands of these and curated the set. Um, the widths would vary, the locations would vary, but yeah, they have this. There's either a white background or a black background. They're very simple, and they're these structures that look like monuments to me. At least the black ones do, and they're casting these shadows in the same direction. So, I mean, I really just love the simplicity of it. I tend to be drawn to more kind of simplistic shapes like this. Um, and yeah, then there's some really interesting kind of tricks of the eye um,
Hmm.
when they're at the same level somewhere else, but the shadows are at different levels. There's just some really cool kind of um, things that pop out. So yeah, I love these works a ton, and they
Yeah,
definitely influence Bent some. And but yeah, I like these a lot.
yeah. There's definitely that illusion feel to them, and I just think it's just fantastic work.
Yeah.
So you have another project. It's called what is it? The Wave Project. It's some animated pieces.
Oh, wait, which one?
Is it a Wave Project? Looks like it
Wave.
might be some. Maybe I got that mixed up then. You had some animated pieces on there? I think there's
Yeah.
only like a couple of them.
Sorry, these. So I did try to play.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. That's the one that you were talking about earlier on. Yep. I'm curious to know, like, your obviously, I think these are some of the only pieces that you
Mhm.
have released as NFTs that are, animated pieces. Is that something you're, willing to explore and try out down the road?
Yeah, for sure. So I very much kind of started a lot of my art in that infinite loop GIF kind of space, and was doing a lot of animations, stuff just like this. Um, and yeah, I can definitely see myself, exploring that space more for sure. I mean, I kind of, my style is kind of all over the place, which you may have noticed, which I
Hmm.
kind of love. Like, I kind of love exploring new things. I mean, that's kind of part of the reason I also chose that I plus plus sketch, is that there's always one more thing to look at, and sketches are never done. So I do like to keep exploring new things, and I can definitely see myself going back to some animated pieces in the future. Yep.
Very cool. I do want to talk about your project on Art Blocks. It's
Sure.
your curated drop. It's almost, yeah, I guess it was around the 1 year anniversary of Art Blocks. It was in November of 2021.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I just want to see. I would just love to hear about like the idea behind that project. It looked like Monuments might have been almost like. Was there like some kind of like inspiration from that project that led to
So
Bent?
I was working on Monuments around the same time I was working on Bent. They're both they both kind of work on an isometric grid, like they're at 60-degree angles, the tops of those monuments. Um, so there's definitely some similarities there. And then the bent, there's some bent features that are called monument, the way that some of the lines are bent. So as I was working on them together, I definitely incorporated some of the same aspects. So yeah, they very much share, some similar characteristics for sure.
Great. And what was the experience like minting maybe mint zero and launching your project on Art Blocks? Because I have to imagine that during November, obviously there's like a huge hype cycle in August, and I'm just curious, what was your experience like to do something on Art Blocks compared to launching something or sharing some pieces on Foundation or OpenSea?
Sure. Yeah. So I think I was the first. I think Bent was the first curated work in year two. I think it just missed year one by a few
Hmm.
days. Um, and yeah, it was an exciting time. The August hype had settled down, but it was still pretty active, so it was still very exciting. But minting number zero was the most terrifying and the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. I mean, it's 6 months of hard work, culminating in this one click of a button. And I don't know what I'm going to get. I hope I made the code right on the
Yeah.
blockchain. Like, I mean, it's an exhilarating, fun process, and I was super happy with the bent that I got.
Yeah, I was
Um,
gonna say, yeah. So you enjoyed mint zero. You were happy with that?
I love it. I tend to love the larger size ones. This is a little larger. I love the color, the purple color. Yeah, I love this one a lot. Yeah, I was
Great.
really
And
happy with.
awesome. And how did you come up with the concept for this project? I know you were talking about, monuments were, created around the same time. So I'm curious to know, like, what was was there some inspiration outside of, or maybe just like influence in your life that you said, hey, like, I want to explore that?
Yeah, I have the. Let me see. So I'll get to it. I have in a couple more slides. I have the whole progression of the development of the project. So this is all 1023 bents. This is the code.
Wow.
Um, let's see. Okay, so this is where Bent started. Bent started. I started exploring quad trees, which are ways to break up. I mean, the one way to do them is to break up little squares into smaller squares. I was watching a Daniel Schiffman video on that, I think. and I wanted to do it for triangles instead. So I converted it over and started doing these triangular um, quad trees. Um, this is where bent started. So then I started trying to fill the spaces with something, these little triangular regions. I started exploring, different fill patterns. Started working at blending different things, all still these triangular little shapes. um, Started, putting some different patterns and textures in them, but this is still all kind of this triangle quad tree approach that I was taking. Here's another kind of direction I took with it, still just kind of exploring the space. And this is very much how I work. Like I start on something that doesn't at all look like where it finishes. But it's a really this is the thing I love most about generative art is like I don't always have a goal in mind. Um, the code just kind of takes me there sometimes.
Yeah, I
Um,
love
so
that.
so from there, I started doing this plotter postcard project where um, I invited anybody who wanted to send me their address, and I'd send them a postcard, a unique plotted postcard for free, and I got stamp donations for it. Um, and so I was working on all these different postcards, and I was making everyone unique, so it was a lot of I had to keep coming up with new things. So I started to do the quad tree triangles here too. So that was one, and then it's harder to fill plots, but you can do lines. So I started to do lines inside of the triangles, and so this is kind of the first one of the first kind of bent like um, tiles of the triangular region. These kind of look like ribbons, and here's another one again, kind of similar to bent. And then I think this is the first one that like really looks like bent to me. Um,
Yeah.
and this postcard actually got mailed to France to V3GA.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Vega, I guess.
yeah,
Or yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Vega. Yeah, yeah, Julian, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's cool that he has that one too.
I'm
Um,
curious. I'm curious to know. Actually, sorry for jumping in, but so when you got to this point in creating this algorithm and tinkering with it, did you know that you had something that you really wanted to be like, hey, I want to like really dive into this, and this is kind of the look I want to go for?
Yeah, I think the point I did. So I think I got to that. Not quite here. Then I took it from the plotter to the screen, and I started doing some things there. And then this was the first thing that I did where I really saw that it was something. And this is where I really thought saw bent for the first time and really dug in deep. And the thing that I did here that was different was that I shaded some of the lines um, differently than the other line. So it
Mm-hmm.
gives it that three-dimensional poppy feel. Like it looks real and it sticks out from the page. And that's a really signature characteristic of Bent. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, it was this, and I shared it on Twitter, and I think it got more likes than I had ever gotten before. So I knew I was onto something, and I loved this. Like I love this style, and so this is where I dug in deep on it. But it was a kind of weird progression to get here for sure.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, so when you're at this part, like how many months into, before you launched the project on Art Blocks, like was this, 2 or 3 months in, or is this towards the
So
end, or?
yeah, I think this is around June or July. Um, and this is the point in time when I was still just playing around, but at this point in time, this is when it became a serious project that I knew I wanted to, you know, turn into a bigger generative work. Um, and I think that I submitted for Artblock's application sometime in July. So it was like maybe a month after this. But then I worked on it, I didn't hear back from that until sometime in October. So I worked all the way up until then to get it polished up.
That's awesome. And I do encourage everyone that is checking out this project to definitely take a closer look at each piece, because I'm always curious to know like where the line is like bending. Like, is it? I don't know. Definitely, it's kind of like obviously the monuments where you kind of have like that illusion, and it definitely makes you kind of look at the finer details of this project, which I truly appreciate. And something I really enjoy also is being able to see how it renders from like the very basic, very first part of the rendering. I think there's what, 6 separate
Yeah.
slides essentially,
Yeah.
and I think that's so cool. Was that something that you kind of thought of early on, or is that kind of just like a late addition?
Yeah. Do you want me to jump there? That was a late addition. So here, it's right here. So this is bent 0, and if you go to the live view on Art Blocks, you click the little live view button. Um, you can click the 1 through 7 number keys, or you can click the left right arrow keys to explore these outputs. So number 1 is the grid. So this is the triangular grid that's underneath everything. 2 is when those grids are divided. So this is the quad tree kind of division. And you can see here that some get divided and some don't. Like these two in the middle are not split into smaller triangles. And those happen for all sorts of different rules, that are built in the code. And then from there, the lines get applied, so they get tiled, they get shapes inside of them. And you can see the bigger triangles here get these 3 lines. They get this special center line, and the smaller triangles they only get one line. And so that center line is a thing that kind of runs throughout bent. You can see it in some pieces, and it comes and goes. And that's when it occurs, is when that region has not been split, that center line pops up. So once they're tiled, some of them are bent. So that's when the lines are, and it's really just the triangles are rotated. Some of them are spun in one direction or the other. And then like the magical part is when they get shaded, and that's when it turns like 3D. And either the horizontal lines or the angular lines or the vertical lines get shaded, depending on the random values assigned. And then color is applied, and then a little texture is applied. It's kind of hard to see unless you zoom in, but there's a little subtle texture on all of them.
Yeah, I really
Yes.
enjoy the texture a lot. I think definitely like a nice touch that you added on.
Yeah, the texture and this whole process got added at the end. Those were little details at the end that really kind of pushed it that much further, which I was really happy with.
Awesome. And have you ever thought about, obviously you have like the 6 slides that you can kind of show from beginning to end. Have you ever thought about printing it out or displaying it where you have, all 6 of them side by side, kind of showing the process of building the mint?
Yeah, that'd be great. I haven't done that before. I mean, I've done it like on a PowerPoint or in a tweet or something, and I've made a little GIF of them. But no, I've never considered printing them. I think that's a great idea. I definitely
Yeah,
love.
even yeah, for like an exhibit or like some kind of art gallery space, I think that'd be cool to kind of show the I think obviously education is such a huge component in our space, like teaching people like what is generative art, like how
Right.
everything's created, and you were showing us your code earlier, which I think is obviously a big piece of the art, and then I think showing that process I think is just so huge for people to kind of like understand like what actually goes into the building part of each mint.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when we look at these art pieces, they almost look magical. Like they look like they just kind of popped into existence out of nowhere sometimes, and it's easy to think like there's some artistic like savant behind the scenes, some genius who just like creates these things willy nilly. But making this art is a lot of work. Like making art is hard, and making art is process and hard work, but it involves skills that can be learned. And um and so yeah, I was hoping to show that like there's this is the final piece, but there's like these simple kind of process and techniques behind all that are understandable. I mean, I hope. Um and it's not magic. And other people can do this like that. I like to share my code. I like to share work in progress pictures. I really enjoy educating people around my art, uh, to encourage other people to make art, because it's not magic. I mean, it can look magical, and it can and the feeling can be magic, but the making art, can anybody can do. It's just you got to work at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I really liked including those in the outputs.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to know with regards to the color palettes, how did you go about selecting the color palettes?
Yeah,
Is there any, personal ties to each one or yeah, I'm curious to know how that came
yeah. Let
about.
me pull up the colors. So the colors, I went through a lot. Well, maybe I should also show. I went through a lot of bad colors. I mean, I think color was maybe one of my weaker suits. Like some of them were okay. This was okay, but some of them they might be okay. But I went through a lot. I tried a lot of different kind of color combinations, and I think this was at least one of my weaker points, is kind of color combinations. Again, some of them are pretty cool, but some of them kind of fall flat a little bit. Um, so I kind of wrestled with color for a long time. This was probably the piece that I wrestled with the most. And for me, the bent kind of structure was the thing, like the composition and the bends themselves was the main thing. And so I wanted color to just kind of be a like a complementing feature and not maybe the main thing. I mean, partially because I wasn't as good at it, but partially because I think that kind of making it more simple was what kind of attracted me more. So my colors are kind of simple. Here, I'll pull them up. I mean, I think they're kind of simple. Um, so there's solid color palettes, and it's kind of the rainbow, right? It's red, orange, yellow, green, teal, blue, and purple. Um, and and the algorithm allows like the hue and saturation to vary a little bit, so they don't all look like the same color, purple or blue, but they're all kind of fairly similar. So these are kind of the main color palettes of bent. I mean, they're colors that I like. They're colors that are fairly simple. They're colors that I kind of hoped were universal, had a universal appeal. There's not a lot of color combinations that maybe can go wrong for some people. Um, so yeah, I like to kind of keep it simple, and these are the main palettes. Um, and the names for them actually my kids came up with. I let
All
them
right.
get involved, which was kind of fun. So Ruby is red. Our dog's name is Ruby.
Oh, that's
uh,
awesome.
Ruby red. Orange crush, medallion, juniper. We have juniper trees in Texas that cause terrible cedar allergies. Wave, atmosphere, and jam, because it looks like grape jam, but also their initials, their first initials are JANM. So
Wow, that's cool.
yeah, that's kind of why they picked that. So there's a personal tie for the color palettes there.
Very cool. And does set making play a factor when it came to, making the decisions about colors? Because I've noticed on art blocks that, a lot of people in the community love building sets between all the different mints. Was that ever a factor, or is that something you kind of just saw after the fact that you created the project and you kind of just saw that unfold?
Yeah, that didn't factor in at the beginning. I wasn't intentionally thinking of sets from the beginning. I kind of looked at them all individually almost. And some of them, like, I mean, the rainbow palette kind of goes together well because it's a rainbow. But I wasn't thinking of sets from the beginning. My main intention was to make each piece unique and each piece kind of live on its own. That was the main thing I was after.
Cool. And I'm curious to know, because I was looking at the different features. Wasn't sure what ribbon and touching those features, what they kind of represent in your project.
Yeah. Oh, and so I'll briefly mention too, there are black and whites. Those are palettes.
Yeah.
There are some
Right.
colored backgrounds. Those are very rare. I think there's only 18 of them total.
Oh wow.
Um, and then there are also gradient palettes that are a little more rare. Um, Ember, Autumn, Mood, Burst, and then Tiger, Lagoon, Crest, and Rainbow. So there's those color palettes too, and those tend to pop up a little more rarely, but they do tend to be a little bit more popular or
Mhm.
sought after. And then I was getting to your question, which was rainbow and touching, right?
Ribbon. I think it was ribbon and touching.
Yeah, ribbon. Sorry,
Yeah, no problem.
ribbon and touching. So ribbon is a feature. I have it somewhere here. Where is it? Or do I have touching? I might just have to scroll through them.
That's fine.
Okay, here's a touching one. So there's the primary line, which are the ones that happen in the small triangles, and then there was that center line that happens in the big triangles. And usually they don't touch. Usually those lines are separated by a little gap. But in the touching feature, they're touching, and they fill out more, and they look a lot more full when they're touching. And they're some of my favorites, the touching ones. They just look a little more solid a lot of times. Like here's
Hmm.
another touching one. I really like that one. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Um, so that's
I
the
love
that's the touching feature.
I love the color palettes you chose. I know you were saying like it wasn't a huge, or it took the most amount of time, but I thought you just is well executed just all around. I think you
Yeah,
just
I
did.
mean, I love the colors, but they're very simple, which I
Mm.
love. Like I
Yeah.
love the simplicity of them too. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the colors, and I think when I was trying to get really complicated and fancy with the colors, and that's what I didn't like so much. But I'm really happy, yeah, with where these ended up for sure.
Hmm.
So those were touching. I also okay. Here's ribbon. So ribbon is one that where there's always a center line in every filled region. So so there's always an outside line that's white here and an inside line that's teal here.
Got
So
it.
that's the ribbon feature. So they kind of look like ribbons to me, which was the idea. I think this might be Thomas's. I'm not sure. And then here's another ribbon, and this is a symmetric one. You can see the top and the bottom are kind of mirrored with each other.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that.
and this might be a touching ribbon too. Yeah, I think it is. So the white
That's
line
like
and the colored lines are there's no gap there.
I always see sometimes I see like depending on the mint, I see roads, and obviously they're going in like different directions.
Yeah, I love how you can kind of explore, and some of them look like kind of these weird block cities, and they look like
Hmm.
roads or little tunnels. And I like that a lot of them take like kind of Escher-like turns where it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like the road kind of turns down here and then it turns
Hmm.
that way. Like that's not, your mind kind of breaks when that happens. And if it was three-dimensional. So yeah, I like that aspect too. It's kind of like a weird feature that pops out.
Definitely. And are you able to share, I don't know if you have any mints that kind of surprise you or any personal favorites you're able to share with us.
Sure. Let me see what all I had pulled up. I probably selected too many. So
No, that's fine. Yeah, talk about as many as you want.
these are some of my favorites. These are like the single bends or there's only one bend in each of these. And these actually came about through a uncontrollable kind of uh, uh, alignment of features that would happen where none of the lines would get bent on the
Mm.
screen. And so and that can happen sometimes based on what popped out. And so I could have left it in and it would have been like a non-bent bent. But instead I kind of searched for that feature where if the code didn't tell any lines to bend, it would tell a random just one to bend. So it was kind of it's almost like a bug fix. This
Yeah.
So I really like those. I think they're really, they're like the definition of bent. There's just this one little bend, uh,
Yeah.
and I like that they're kind of a fix to a bug too. Um, I really like those, and the jumbo ones here are really really striking. I really like those a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really like those. A couple of fun ones. This is the white rabbit one. I don't know if you can see the white rabbit there. Little ears. The ears
Oh
are
yeah, yeah. And that's the two eyes right there.
little eyes. Yeah, that's kind of
Was that
fun.
a community find or is that something that you learned?
Yeah, no, I think Increment, who is that's his Twitter handle name, found that and sent it to me like the day after the drop. Yeah, which was fun. Yeah, that was a
Cool.
community find. This one is another community find. It's the Open Sea Penguin. It's the O and the S,
Oh yeah.
and then there's a penguin in there. I think like these are the wings. I think there's a penguin in there. Somebody else called it a penguin, and I kind of saw it.
I love it. I can't unsee the S or the O and the S now.
The OS, yep. The OS stand out for sure. And I don't know, the S, I would think there's a lot of those throughout Bent, but I haven't seen many of them. There's definitely O's that happen, but
Yeah,
the
maybe the S is kind of like angled in a way, but that one, I mean, it's just like very clear right in front of you.
it's right there. Well, it's kind of like framed too in a way that makes it
Hmm.
stand out. Oh, and this one spells up, which is kind of
Oh
fun.
yeah. I love
Uh,
that.
so those were kind of unique ones. This one I really loved. Like I love that I love the color palette. This is an ember or a tiger. It's purple. I think it's a tiger. But yeah, I love the gradient. I love it's a touching one. I love that it's only bent in the middle and the edges are all unbent and all the white lines only appear in the middle and not the edges. This is one of the ones that's really fun to kind of look at closer and explore to me.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's like a definite focus, like on the middle, like you were saying. I love that.
yeah. Hmm. Um, Yeah, I mean, those were the favorites. I had some features kind of highlighted. I don't know
Yeah,
if we can go
love to
through
see
those.
those.
Okay.
Definitely.
Um, so we were talking about color palettes earlier. There's also a palette that happens that's called pair, where two random colors are paired together. Sometimes they look cool. They usually actually look pretty good. You would think throwing two random colors together usually doesn't look too great, but they end up looking pretty good. So I like some of those pairs really turn out because they're different. You know, usually the lines are white or black, the complementing lines, but when they're a different color, they kind of stand out. I like those. Um, so yeah, I think I was going to explain some of the bend features, if that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please
so
do.
the bends have a bend feature, which is how the lines are bent. Wander is one that's kind of bent randomly. So the bending can happen wherever. It's all random. That's the wander feature. Group is when they're kind of grouped together. Like you see, there's sections here where they're all bent the same way. So these kind of end up looking like cities or almost like
Hmm.
mountainscapes or like geographical. Um, a lot of these take on that kind of characteristic look, which is kind of cool. So that's the grouping feature. There's another grouping one. Oh, I wanted to pull this one up because I think somebody's actually going to get a tattoo of this,
Oh,
which
no way.
which blows my mind. Like that somebody would do that. So I think that's so cool. And yeah, I love this one. This one's a lagoon color palette, which is the blue to green. It's it's a good size. It's a really cool. It doesn't have any center white lines, which is a cool look. Um, and yeah, so that's another group feature. Um, and then there's the bend feature called a cross, where as you move from left to right or top to bottom, um, like the left and right here are straight and the middle is bent. So that's an across feature. Then there is center and edges. So here the center is bent and here the edges are all bent. And that results in the edges here all being the same direction and the center here all being the same direction, which is kind of a cool look. It was like that one we were looking at earlier, where
Hmm.
the focal point's kind of the middle. And these kind of look like chaotic towards the outside, where it's almost like exploding or something. So
Yeah,
these
that'd
are,
be a nice side by side piece.
yeah,
Right there.
these are two good
Nice
ones
set.
together, right? Um, this is a unique feature. It's called conform, and that's where the ones that have center lines, the one that have the center white lines, all go the same way, and the ones that don't all go the same way. So they end up conforming based on whether or not they have that white center line, and they just have a very different look than most of the other bench, which is kind of cool. Um, let's see, there's another conform, very unique looking.
Yeah, minimalistic kind of
Yeah.
vibe to it.
Hmm. And then there's a radiate feature, a bend radiate feature, which will bend, based on an angular kind of direction. These also look like kind of like cityscapes or something too. They look very structural.
Hmm.
And the one that looks, there's another one, and this one looks very structural. It looks like almost like a corner,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
like a corner of a room or something. It's
Hmm.
kind of,
That one's pretty trippy, actually.
it is what. And so some of these too, like the way that the lines are spaced and how close you are to them, yeah, like that really can mess with your eyes.
Hmm.
This is one of those. Like if it's at the right scale on your monitor, it kind of hurts your eyes a little bit. There's another bend radiate. There's a lot of those. I like these a lot. There's some very rare symmetric ones, which are pretty cool looking. We saw a top bottom one earlier. This is a left to right. Um, Then there's stairs. So those look like stairs. This was
Yeah.
number 3. This was a really early one. Looks like spilled yellow paint or something.
Hmm. Like
Uh,
cascading down. I love
yeah.
that.
And the weird thing about these too is that you normally see them as stairs kind of sticking out, but you can also see them as underhangs, which is like an optical illusion.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I can see that now.
Okay, that's quick. That's good. That was way quicker than it took me. Somebody else
Yeah.
did that to me. Um, yeah. So
You also have to look at an angle. Sorry. Yeah, you have to look at an angle for that one. That one's
yeah, you
cool.
do have to kind of look at it just right. and they all can do that. You just have to, you know, kind of twist your mind a little bit. This was the one I think right before Jeff Davis's Mint that he was like, "Oh, I wish I got that one." That one's it's really minimalistic. It's really cool looking. I like that one. Um, I think that's Vincent Van Doe's. Maybe is that right? I can't remember. That's another cool stare. That's a nice
Yeah.
ember palette, and that one's got a lot of texture on it. You can kind of see. I'm kind of flying through these, but there's a lot of bin features. Um, there's the cliff feature.
I can.
It
Yeah.
looks like falling off of a cliff, and sometimes it'll be the bottom of a cliff, like this one. So the top and bottom are both cliffs. Then there's a seam feature where it's just one seam running across the middle. That's another bin feature. There's another seam. That's a very
Oh wow.
very different.
That one is that's an actual mint, or is that not like a part of one of the
Oh, no, it's
parts
a
of the
myth.
rendering?
Yeah,
Wow, that one's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah. I mean, I really wanted to go for very different looking pieces. I mean, I really tried for two things. I really tried to make it I mean, I think everybody tries for this, but cohesiveness and
Mm.
variability. But I really wanted that variability. Like if you saw a bent that you hadn't seen before, I wanted you to know it was a bent and to know that you hadn't seen it before, which is really
Yeah,
cool to do. And yeah, so this is like very different, but it's still a bent.
you nailed it. I love it.
Connect is just like two seams. And so they look like little connected snakes kind of, and that's another connect where they get looped together. So these are some more rare kind of, these don't pop up too often. And then there's the monument.
I think it's druids, right? If I'm
That
not
is Druid.
mistaken.
Yeah, Druid
Yeah,
mentioned that one, which was pretty amazing. Yep. So
yeah,
that's
that
like
one's a.
that's the emoji in the Discord. It's the
Oh, really? Okay.
emoji in the Discord, yeah, which is fun.
That kind of actually reminds me a lot. When I see that one specifically, it reminds me of monuments because it looks like casting the shadow, or it looks like it's an overhang, like you said. It's just like a really cool optical illusion going on.
Yeah. So I was doing this bent feature while I was doing monuments. I think around the same time, and yeah, this is very much. I mean, it's called monument. It's very much the same vein there. Oh yeah,
Awesome.
it's like the
Oh
monument.
yeah, there you go.
Um, yeah, I don't. I think I have more, but you can ask me. I don't know where we are on time.
No, I mean, if you have one or two other ones that you want to share, it's totally up
Sure.
to you. I love that.
So let me. I think. Okay, I guess I don't have too many more. Those were the way that the bins happen. There's also the way that the divide happens, which controls whether or not those center lines occur. So some of them, like this is the divide wander feature. And so there's all these patches of area where there are center lines and patches without. Some of these look kind of cool. You can see shapes in some of them. They're usually very different looking. And then these, I think, tend to be some of the more kind of popular ones. So all of these have not been divided, and all of these have. And it results in this, bands of color that radiate out, which are really cool looking. It's like an hourglass kind of shape. It's kind
Yeah.
of cool. Another one there. And then so some of the ones that I tend to like the most are what I call inverted, where the main line is really thin, and the inner line, the center line, is thicker. So it's kind of more. There's more white space, I think, which I like. And then there's these patchy pops of color in there. So I really like a lot of these inverted ones. A lot. That's another inverted one.
Oh wow, yeah. That one's very unique. Also,
Yeah,
that one's really cool. You can also see them as like cubes in a way sometimes, depending on which one you look at. But then also just like a circle, or
yeah,
yeah, it's a really cool one.
yeah. I called them circles, but they're hexagons or cubes. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Here's another inverted. I really like the inverted. And I also like some of the ones that are just really thin lines by themselves. Like this one's really cool to me, I think.
Love that. Well, this
Um,
has been a lot of fun. Just going through all the different mints, and like you said earlier, I think it's just really cool how like the diversity you have within this project, but you can tell it's all from the Bent project, which I think you just executed really well. And I actually really love the one that you just pulled up right now. It has like a really nice gradient color and
Yeah,
yeah.
I think the last ones were these ones I called no shades, where
Mm,
typically the lines are shaded, so they look three-dimensional, but some of them aren't. So this one's there's no shading in this one.
very
Um,
cool.
yeah, so those are kinda they look like the Transformer logo too, kind of thing.
Yeah. And do you offer prints for these, or is this more of a yeah, you do? Okay,
Yeah, I do.
great.
Yep. Anybody who owns it can print one. I don't limit the number. The NFT is the collectible.
Mhm,
I'll print and sign one for whoever owns the NFT. Yep.
great. And where
But
can people go to, collect one of these prints?
yeah, you then go to my website, so ippsketch.com. Um, and there's a bent section on there, and there's some information on prints.
Excellent, awesome. And so I'm kinda curious, changing to moving aside from the Bent project,
Mhm.
so what do you do in your spare time when you aren't coding a project? Like, do you have any other hobbies or things that you do for fun? Or yeah, I'm just kinda curious, like, what that kinda looks like.
Yeah, so I am a full-time engineer still, and I do art, and I have 3 grade school kids. So uh, I don't have a lot of free time. But so normally I'm, shuttling to soccer practice or going to a swim meet or something, which is great. I love all those things a lot.
Mhm.
And then I do enjoy skateboarding when I can get out there with my son. So that's one thing I do kind of enjoy doing when I get the time to.
Oh, that's awesome. You'll have to come out to Marfa then during our annual get together. And then Tyler, I know, Tyler Hobbs
Mhm.
skateboards. And I think there's actually a skate park not too far from like the Art Block's house. It'd be cool to kind of have like a, I don't
Yeah,
know, just like a free skate.
there's a nice little mini ramp at a park
Yeah,
there. Mhm. I
cool.
love it.
And how do you prepare for coding a project? I'm kind of curious as because obviously it takes a lot of time to code a project, and also you're just kind of exploring all these different ideas. But is there like a way you prepare? Like, do you have, I don't know, some people I know listen to specific music, or they have like coffee, tea. They have like this whole like routine to get set up.
No, I don't. I mean, I code whenever I find the time. So, at a lunch break at work or, at night when we're watching TV. No, I just code it. I get it in whenever I can. So I don't have a specific routine. I like coffee. I drink a lot of coffee. I usually do while I'm coding, but I don't have a set routine, which is kind of like the way I code too. Like my code kind of goes all over the place. So I'm kind of attacking it whenever I can.
What about breakfast tacos? I feel like you talk about that a lot in Block Talk, and people are always loving, I don't know, talking about the Marfa burritos. And yeah, so is that something you eat pretty often? I want to
Well,
ask you,
yeah,
but
sure. I mean, I'm in Austin. We have great tacos here. I eat tacos for lunch whenever I can. I eat tacos for breakfast whenever I can, and dinner. Yeah, we love
love
tacos
it.
here. I love tacos. Yes.
Cool. And then moving still to like more of the coding side, do you have any plans for an Art Blocks playground project in the works? Or I know you mentioned also you have a drop. Um, is that on Tezos in the next few days or few weeks?
Yeah, I have a drop tomorrow on Tezos or Thursday, whenever this is coming out.
Mhm.
Yeah, on Tezos with a gallery in Italy called Cortesi. They're doing it at an art fair in Bologna, which is kind of cool. And but yeah, I am working on. I mean, I think I have probably 3 or 4 different ideas for a playground project. I just have to now. It's a matter of like deciding on which one to do and really pushing it forward hard. But yeah, I definitely have plans. No concrete plans I can share at this point, but
Yeah,
I'm always working on something for sure.
awesome. And as far, I know you mentioned Coding Train earlier. As far as resources for people that are getting into generative art, or maybe they're kind of just trying to get their feet wet. Like, what do you have any recommendations for people that are being like aspiring artists?
Sure. Yeah. So there's 2 books I would say. One is Generative Design. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Generative Design. It's focused on P5JS. So if you're interested in learning P5JS, this was the book I learned with. It's a really great resource. There's an online code database where you can go get examples and kind of follow along. It's a really great book for that. I would highly recommend that. And then I would also recommend the book Art and Fear, which is for any artist. I think I heard Tyler recommend it on a Chris Reed interview like a year or so ago. It's a great book. like the three main takeaways from it were that art is hard, that art involves skills that can be learned, and that art is for ordinary people. And it's just really inspiring to to push me forward and to know that I don't have to be some art savant, like I was saying earlier, to make art. Anybody can make art. You just got to work at it,
Mhm.
and you got to know that it's hard, and you got to own that from the beginning. But that's a great book too. I would highly recommend it.
Excellent. That's very cool. I always love talking about mental health. I feel like it's such an important part of the space, and maybe it's not getting enough attention. But how do you, once you're done, like when you finished coding or finished releasing Bent, like how do you wind down from a project that's fully minted? Or yeah, is that something that you have any? Did you just get away from social media, or what does that look like for you?
I probably should have. I mean, that's hard. It's definitely a very leading up to a drop is super stressful.
Mhm.
Doing a drop is super stressful, but I didn't know how stressful like after the drop would be. All the market talk, all the talk in Block Talk, like negative and positive about your work. It's just very it's a very vulnerable place to be and
Mhm.
be very humbling. And so I would love tips myself. But I mean, I do feel like one of the things that helped me the most was try to disconnect as much as I could. It's impossible to keep up with everything, and it's futile to try. And so it's best to just kind of step away for a while. I mean, that's the advice that I still have for myself too. But it's hard to follow. But I think
Yeah,
it's
understand. I appreciate that. And how can people follow you? Should they have any questions? Do you have any social media plugs? Your website?
yes. I mean, the Twitter is where I'm at all the time, which is ippsketch on Twitter. I also have Instagram and I do have a website, ippsketch.com. But Twitter is where you'll find me most. And I think my DMs are open. I'm also on Discord. Come DM me there. I'm happy to chat and talk to anybody. But yeah, Twitter's the my main thing.
Great. Well, IPV Sketch, thank you so much for being on After Dinner Minutes. It was so great to hear about your projects before Bent, but then also talking about all the different features and colors and just how really cool and just all the different optical illusions that you can kind of experience within
Yeah.
the Bent project. So I really appreciate you being on here today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. On next week's pre-recorded After Dinnerman show, which will be released on May the 19th, we have generative artist Marcelo Soria Rodriguez. He's the creator of the curated project Entre Tiempos. So that'll be next Thursday, May 19th. We have a Twitter Spaces discussion called Minters and Makers. It's a weekly show with 3 to 5 artists, collectors, or other notable members with conversations surrounding art. Our next show is on May the 12th, starting at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, featuring Rob Dixon, Cole Sternberg, and JMY, aka Jimmy Herdberg. And you can tune into that conversation via the Artblocks Twitter handle, which is at artblocks_IO. Those discussions and all of our discussions on Mentors and Makers are all recorded and available in a podcast format, which is available on all major platforms such as Apple, Spotify, and Google. All of our After Dinnerman shows are also being turned into a podcast, so make sure you check that out on Apple, Spotify, and Google. Finally, we have a weekly newsletter that gets delivered once a week with information on upcoming drops and generative art related news. You can find a link to the newsletter in the description of this YouTube video. Again, thank you, IPB Sketch, so much for joining me on After Dinnerments. I really appreciate you. For everyone tuning in, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to the Artblocks YouTube channel. Be kind to each other, buy what you love, and we will see you all next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.